So let's be real for a moment. It's very easy to get all bogged down in your drawing practice every so often, whether that has to do with having super high expectations for the outcome of your drawing, or it has to do with being all tense in how you're bringing your marks and your tones onto the paper, or whether it has to do plain and simple with being uninspired. Whether this happens to you every blue moon or it's becoming the normal state of affairs, this video will help you understand the root cause for this happening, and it's going to give you a fun exercise to help you break free from these traps of perfectionism. Before we dive in, and in case we haven't met yet, my name is Carolin and I'm a practicing artist and instructor who helps artists who are tired of their technical and creative limitations. I help them master drawing once and for all so they can enjoy the freedom that comes with meaningfully expressing themselves. If that sounds like you, be sure to subscribe so you can stay connected with me. And if you're really serious about moving on from your limitations and you're ready for the next step, look in the description below this video. I linked a free masterclass that will explain to you how you can get to a place where you love every single drawing that you create. But for now, let's get into this lesson. Let's begin by understanding the problem more fully as we dive in. I think that as artists, our main goal is to be feeling free to create in a state of flow that feels fun and exciting and expressive. And often we lack this feeling in our practice and instead feel more like we're bogged down because of two main components. It might be the physical component of how we're holding our pencils and pens and the marks that result from there, or from our attitude or our mindset, our mental disposition toward the drawing process that have us feeling constricted and tense. So if we want to get to a place of drawing freely and with fun and with energy and excitement and life, then we have to change both aspects. Let's address the mental aspect first, because if we are not aware of this and change this up front, then all the fancy techniques of holding your pencil and pen aren't going to change your feeling bogged down. So why do you draw? It's probably because at one point it's been really fun for you to do this, right? Or maybe you felt like, wow, I'm kind of not half bad at this. It usually is something that we do because we enjoy it. And then we become aware of, hey, this is a thing I can get better at and I can learn more about. And then we start pursuing a next level of excellence in it. And what happens is that as we're pursuing that next level of excellence, is that we start to become aware of the thou shalts. What I mean by that is aware of the lessons that instructors and other artists offer to us. And those can be things like, hey, if you want to have good proportions, you want to measure, or if you want to have your drawings look three-dimensional, you want to become aware of plane changes and cross contours. The lessons themselves are really not the problem. The problem becomes that as we are learning these lessons, we think that the teachers and the other artists will have all the answers for us, and all we have to do is to follow every single thing they do and they say, and that will then lead us to this ultimate goal of improved drawing skills. But that's only partially true. The true part is, yes, you will want to learn what a gesture is and how to capture a gesture. Yes, you want to learn what shapes are and how to design good, clear shapes and how to get good proportions. You'll want to learn how to make form appear three-dimensional on your page, how to create space, how to use value, and how to compose your images. Those are all fundamental principles that teachers, other artists can help you understand. Now, what these teachers and other artists can't help you with is knowing what lights you up, knowing what subject matter you can latch onto to practice these principles through. So if you've signed up for a drawing class and it's a drawing class of buildings and you just hate the idea of drawing buildings and yet you're learning about shapes and proportions and space, it's not going to do you much good. Yes, you learn some things, but it might be way more effective if you had signed up for a drawing class about animals if you love drawing animals, or a drawing class on the figure if you love drawing the figure, and you learn those principles via the subject matter. So point number 1 is don't lose yourself for the sake of instruction. Yes, learn those principles and learn them in connection to the thing that you absolutely love. So for me, that's always animals and people and nature. And so whenever I feel bogged down, I loosen back up by beginning with really exciting imagery. What is lighting me up in terms of what do I want to look at? What would make me just so happy to spend the next hour staring at and drawing from? So in this case, I was looking at racing dogs, and for you that might be something very different. But here's where we always have to begin, because if our drawing practice isn't being led by joy, then we're always going to end up feeling stuck in one point or another. And if you bristle against the idea of leading your practice with joy, I'll have you consider the research by the scientist Stuart Brown, who has shown that the most successful animal species, humans included, are those who don't follow rigid routines, but those who allow for the most amount of play in their development. So let's make this more practical. Aside from choosing imagery that we're super excited about, another thing you want to do if you're feeling totally stuck is to take the pressure off. And I don't mean not drawing and ignoring your creative practice for a long time, but what I mean is to draw in a way that 100% takes any expectations off of your end result. You draw for drawing's sake, not for the product. So you might want to sit down with a fresh sheet and say, whatever is going to end up on this sheet, I'm going to throw away. Not because I want to be careless and I don't give a crap anymore about my drawings, but precisely because I am so curious about what will come out if I allow myself complete freedom to do things that I have not allowed myself to do. So in this case, I've allowed myself to draw wildly, expressively, with a pen that is permanent, risking looking like a complete idiot, and also risking coming up with some really energetic and wild marks that I would have never arrived at had I drawn in a much more controlled way. If, however, you always have this looming expectations in the back of your mind that this better look good, that this better represent to the outside world that I'm an actual artist, then you're always going to have this constriction that's going to keep you from drawing freely. And it's not because we're defect or bad people, it's just a natural protective mechanism that is trying to preserve our idea that we are creative and artistic because it matters so much to us. So it makes sense that we would want to do anything to maintain our self-image as artists. And yet, to get to that place where art and drawing can be this outlet of flow and complete freedom, we have to risk letting go. We have to take the pressure off and be okay with producing many drawings that are going to end up in the trash can. But by taking that pressure off, you also open up that possibility for striking gold, which you would have never struck had you stuck with your controlled ways. So let's make this practical. When you're feeling bogged down and you need to loosen up, here's what I want you to do. I want you to grab a drawing implement that's forcing you to be bold. So in my case, I'm using a permanent marker that is thicker than I'm comfortable with. For you, that might be maybe a watercolor brush with watercolors out. It might be a gigantic fat charcoal block. Pick something that forces you to be way more bold than your comfort zone allows. And then you gather a bunch of images that are exciting to you, like we discussed earlier, and you go for it. You set that goal of filling the page with these images. I sometimes like to time myself and only give myself no more than 5 minutes. But you don't have to do that. But as you are starting to draw, you need to begin with a conscious effort to draw in a ridiculous manner almost. Draw with so much energy that it's just laughable.
Draw with your non-dominant hand. See what happens if you completely give up control. Again, not because you don't care and not because you don't want to have a good outcome in the end, but because we're beginning from a standpoint of curiosity. I wonder what happens if I don't hold my pencil so tight. I wonder what happens if I hold my pen at the very end of it, almost like it's a floppy branch and I have no control. Like, what happens to the end result when I draw in that way? I wonder what happens if I draw with my left hand instead of my right hand. Anything that will help you have a different grip from the one that you usually have, and using that in a curious way. And then you fill the page in multiple approaches, some with a non-dominant hand, some with a dominant hand but holding the pencil in the very end of it, some again in a very different way. And then at the end of it, you just lean back and see what you like out of this big jumble. Is there anything that seems interesting? If all of them are boring to you, that's totally fine. Because remember, the intention wasn't a finished product. The intention was discovery. What do I find interesting? What is possible if I change the way I do things usually? Because to actually see change, we have to change the ways we do things on autopilot. And you can't change those unless you make an intention to do something that just seems utterly ridiculous. So gather all the courage you have and go for it. If you want to get out of this funk, you have to risk something. You have to risk doing something scary, but if you do risk it, you also risk striking gold.
So I hope this video has given you some good insight into why you might be feeling bogged down and how to break free from that. And if you feel like you need a little bit extra help and some guidance, I work with people in my online mentoring program to help them reach their drawing goals. You can find out about this in the description below, and I'd love to work with you too one day. Until next time, take care.